Hello, everyone, and welcome to part 4 of Real Charlie's trip through my DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K collection. We have a lot to cover today. We're going from the P's to the S's, so let's get started. And as I get this camera going, I just want to say that this is a great television section of my collection, so it'll be fun to sort of share all of that. First up is Pedro Almodovar's gorgeous autobiographical Pain and Gloria, starring Antonio Banderas. Next up after that is Dee Rees' beautiful indie film, Pariah. If you have not seen this film, it's just absolutely gorgeous. It is a film about a young woman in high school who's discovering that she's a lesbian, and she's being pulled in two different directions between her family, who she doesn't really fit in with, and the women at the bar that she also doesn't really fit in with. Just really stunning and a great first film for the wonderful director Dee Rees. After that, we have Paris 559, which is, I should say, Paris 559, Theo and Hugo. And that is a really lovely sort of triptych date movie where two boys meet and meet at a club and then spend the late night and the next morning together. And it's just really beautiful. And Paris looks absolutely gorgeous early in the morning like that. From there, we have our very first TV show for this section, which is my all-time favorite, The Partridge Family, which I grew up with. This year is the 50th anniversary of The Partridge Family in 2020. They premiered in 1970. It's just a beautiful series, and I love it, and I can't say enough about it. From there, we go into my absolute favorite Christmas special, Pee-wee's Playhouse Christmas Special. This is the craziest Christmas special you could ever imagine, packed with the most incredible list of guest stars ever imaginable. If you have not seen this, please try to find it somewhere. It's streaming, I'm sure, and it's also available on Blu-ray and DVD as well. After that, brand new for me, it just arrived yesterday, 1951's A Place in the Sun, starring Elizabeth Taylor, Shelley Winters, and Montgomery Clift. This is one of my all-time favorite movies, and I'm so excited to be able to watch this on Blu-ray. Fingers crossed, this is this is actually an Australian imprint, but they claim that it's a all-region Blu-ray, so I'm hoping that I can see that without any problems. From there, we go into Todd Haynes' Poison, which is one of Todd's earlier films. Todd is one of my favorite directors of all time. And so Poison is sort of a triptych, and it represents, it's sort of an analogy to the AIDS crisis, and it was filmed during the AIDS crisis. So a really important historical film and indie film in the LGBT community and also in the AIDS community. After that, Postcards from America is another great indie film about the life of David Wojnarowicz, the artist. And it is a fiction film, so it's not a documentary, but it's a lot of fun and really an interesting movie and great for my collection. From there, we've got Prick Up Your Ears, which is again, another fiction film, but it's about a real life person. This is about British playwright Joe Orton and his sort of interesting life and really sad death. So that's really great. Gary Oldman is in that, and it's a really, really good indie film that I bet a lot of people haven't seen before. From there, we go into the absolutely luminous The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, which Maggie Smith won an Oscar for, and I just really adore this film. And then after that, we have The Princess and the Warrior, which is Tom Tykwer's second film of the triptych that he created back in the 90s. This is a great film and also full of lots of intensity, very similar to Run Lola Run. And then after that, I'm not sure if I can even get a wide shot of this, but I have all 5 seasons of Queer as Folk. Here's season 1, 2, and 3, and then I'll finish up on 4 and 5. Queer as Folk is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. It was really revolutionary for the time period. It started out as a short series, like a season and a half, by Russell T Davies over in the UK, and then Showtime purchased it for America, and brought it here and expanded it and widened it and really pushed the envelope on it. And it's just an incredible celebratory series about gay men and lesbians living in Pittsburgh in the 2000s. Just really, really great. I could write a whole thing or talk for an hour on Queer as Folk alone. And then moving through that television series, we've got Quinceanera, which is a earlier indie film from directors and life partners Richard Glazer and Wash Westmoreland. You may remember the film Still Alice, starring Julianne Moore. They are the directors of Still Alice, and this is one of their earlier films. It's really a beautiful film about a young girl who comes of age, and there's a supporting character who is her cousin, who's male and in the Latinx community. Really, really great film. After that, I still have Woody Allen's Radio Days. I love Radio Days. I know it's really controversial with Allen, and I haven't watched this film in a long time, but I just haven't been able to get rid of it from my collection. There are so many films from that time period that I adore, and I don't know how we're ever going to make amends with this, but for now, it's just sort of sitting there collecting dust. I get to dust it. After that, a great Blu-ray, The Razor's Edge. This is one of those films from the 1940s that if you haven't ever seen The Razor's Edge, it is so contemporary. It's really about the meaning of life and what's important to people in life, starring Tyrone Power and Gene Tierney. Just an incredible, incredible film. And then after that, we've got two Merchant Ivory films with Rocky Horror in between. So we've got Remains of the Day. I don't even know what to say about this. There's the four main Merchant Ivory films that were made during this time period are just four of my absolute favorite films. And so it's Howard Zahn, Morris, and then Remains of the Day and A Room with a View. All of these films are just beautiful films. Remains of the Day is really sort of a precursor to Downton Abbey. And then A Room with a View is just E.M. Foster at his best with class and romance and all this, all wrapped up in a beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous bow that only Merchant Ivory can do. And of course, in between is the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which I love and watch and still think is just one of the best campy musicals of all time. After that, I mentioned Tom Tykwer earlier with Princess and the Warrior. Run Lola Run was Tom's, not his first film, but his first breakout film, which gave him sort of an international following. And Run Lola Run is one of my favorite films of all time. It really holds up. I watched this Blu-ray when I first purchased it and couldn't believe how great this movie still felt after all these years. It's a techno wonderland, and a must-see for anybody interested in 1990s international filmmaking. From there, we go into the Criterion version of Todd Haynes' Safe, which was a film he made with Julianne Moore. He's made several films with Julianne Moore. This was more of an indie, more of a gritty film, and it really is an analogy to AIDS and also to any sort of autoimmune disease, and features the New Age movement of the 1990s very prominently. After that, I've got The Secret, which I absolutely have to thank my friend Barbara for giving me a copy of. It's a lesbian film, which I have not gotten to yet, but I will get to it very soon and review it on the site as well. Serial Mom is after that, the Blu-ray, one of my favorite John Waters films. Kathleen Turner is just brilliant in this. Ricky Lake is in it. And it's just a hysterically funny film. I love Waters, and Serial Mom and Hairspray are really at his peak as far as I'm concerned. And then after that, my Blu-ray guilty pleasure of Sex and the City, the extended cut movie version. Not much needs to be said about that. You're either gonna like gag, or you're gonna laugh, or you're gonna hip and holler and yip and yell for that. From there, we have a BBC video of Stephen Polyakov's Shooting the Past. It's really hard to find films about librarians. This is a film about a photo archive and the people involved in it, and it's just really, really an incredible miniseries. So I have to own this, and I haven't watched it in a really long time, and I should watch it again and review it. but it's a great, great film from his staple. And then after that, we've got John Cameron Mitchell's Short Bus, which is his film that he made after 9/11, and it's an ode to New York City, and it's an ode to sexuality and gender and sexual inclusion and fluidity, and it has real sex in it, and it's just a really fun, beautiful, poignant, gorgeous indie film. Really, really a standout, and I'm so happy to have that in my collection. From there, we go and move to A Single Man, which is based on the fabulous Christopher Isherwood novel that I read when I was a young man. Tom Ford took this idea, bought it, and decided he was going to become a film director, and I was horrified because I thought that this film was going to really ruin my opinion of Isherwood's book or taint it, and it was just the opposite. Ford hit this out of the park. It was just absolutely beautiful, and I loved it in spite of myself. And the last TV show that we're going to discuss between the P's and the S's is 6 Feet Under. 6 Feet Under is my favorite television show of all time. It took place in the early 2000s. It's about a family of funeral directors and their loves and their lives during this 5-year period. I can't even begin to talk about this without getting excited or crying or blubbering away. So all I'll say is that if you have never, for whatever reason, seen 6 Feet Under, please give it a shot. It may not speak to you, but if it does, you're going to be in for 5 seasons of really great entertainment. After that, we have Skyjacked, which is Susan Day's first feature film that she was in while The Partridge Family was still being filmed. Really lovely film with a lot of I shouldn't say lovely film. It's definitely that genre, the 70s genre of sort of disaster films. So it's a lot of fun. Charlton Heston is in it, and Yvette Mimieux and Rosie Greer. Really, really fun. There are 2 DVDs that I have in these sleeves, so I'm just going to pull these out as we go along. This first one is Song of the Loon, which a friend of mine at Fairfield U, my friend John, made for me from his brother's copy. This is a really old, out of print. It's never been put on DVD. It's a rare out of print from VHS classic gay male film, and I'm so glad to have that in my collection. So thank you, John, for that. After that, I have both versions of A Star Is Born that are my 2 favorites. The first one, which is the white box, is Barbra Streisand's version from '76, and the second one in the brown box is Judy Garland's version from '54. Again, not much to say about that other than, oh my goodness, if you haven't seen either of them, watch them. The Garland version is completely, incredibly over the top, and the Streisand version is one of my all-time favorites. And then the other quick sleeve we have here, my good friend Barbara, who I mentioned earlier, gave me a copy of State of Grace from Grace Jones, which I treasure and hope at some point will be put on Blu-ray. So this is performance pieces from the artist Grace Jones. After that, we've got The Station Agent. The Station Agent is Tom McCarthy's film, a very cool indie film starring Patricia Clarkson, Peter Dinklage, and Bobby Cannavale, about 3 lonely people that sort of fall into each other's orbits. Just really, really, really lovely. After that, The Sticky Fingers of Time, one of my favorite indie films. It's a sci-fi film. It's a love story. It's a lesbian film. It's an indie film. It's an East Village, New York City film. And it's just full of fun and imagination and beautiful, beautiful people in it. From there, we have the movie Stonewall. Now, this is the 1997 Stonewall. So if you're thinking about the more recent Stonewall, please do not. This is, I feel like, the better of the 2 films that are called Stonewall. This was taken from Martin Duberman's book. It was adapted from Martin Duberman's book by my favorite, Ricky Beadle Blair, who wrote the screenplay for this. Nigel Finch directed it. And it stars Guillermo Diaz when he was still sort of a twink actor, before he got his big TV role breaks, and also stars Frederick Weller, who's another great actor that not a lot of people may know about. I think this may have been one of his first films. And then from there, we go into the French Stranger by the Lake. Another film that has actual sex in it, but is a feature film. It's not a porno film or anything like that. Stranger by the Lake is a great mystery, and it's all takes place at a cruising spot, and it's really, really fascinating and really fun and really atmospheric and scary. After that, Hitchcock's Strangers on a Train, which is probably my top 3 Hitchcocks of all time. I probably would say that it's Strangers on a Train, Rope, and because those are the 2 Farley Granger films. Yeah, it's hard for me to, they changes all the time, but Strangers on the Train is always in the top 3. And then finally, to wrap up the S's, is Tennessee Williams' Suddenly Last Summer, again with Elizabeth Taylor and again with Montgomery Clift, but this time with Katharine Hepburn. So that is my P's through the S's. Stay tuned next week for the final installment where we'll go through the rest of the alphabet, finish up, and move on to other projects. Thank you so much. Please check out my blog, Real Charlie, online, and post some questions or comments. And I'm happy to field some answers and have a conversation. Take good care.